All right, the best gambling guy that I know, the best guy that you could go to listen to is Ian Parker. Now, in full disclosure, he's a friend of mine. All right, great. I'm just getting out of that way. But aside from that, if you track him publicly, which has been done, he's got just this incredible return rate. So when Ian starts talking about fights, I tend to listen. Talking with Ian this morning. He's out there on the East Coast. I'm out here. It's like 5 in the morning my time. Very early, and we get going over our cups of coffee. And he made an observation. It was a simple observation, but it did make me look. And he was saying, in his opinion, before we get into the X's and O's, or before we get into the odds, or before we get into predictions of winners or losers for Khamzat Chimaev versus Paulo Costa, we got to get him to the ring. What? And I literally wrote him back and said, you have my attention. It was like, is this inside scoop that you're sharing with me? Which one of them do you think isn't going to make that walk? Now, I brought you a piece several months ago where I told you this fight doesn't feel right. And it doesn't. Now, that doesn't mean in a negative way, in full disclosure. This is just a very different fight. I went on Ariel's show, and Aaron Bronstetter gave me credit for this. TSN out of Canada. He gave me credit for it. He said, as reported by Chael Sonnen. I wasn't attempting to report something, but I talked to Paulo's team, and I talked to Khamzat Chimaev's team, and I just brought on Ariel's show that those two are going to fight. It's going to be October 22nd. It's going to be on Fight Island. Guys, when October 22nd rolls around versus the date that I made that claim and Aaron Bronstetter gave me credit for is 6 months. I do not know a time in the sports history, not UFC, industry-wide, I don't know of a time that a fight was announced 6 months before it happened. Now, I must tell the rest of the story, which is that was me announcing it. That wasn't done by the organization, and perhaps nothing was off there. And as a matter of fact, not only did they not back me up, and not only did they not announce it, they announced a different fight for Paulo Costa. Looks like Chael's news is wrong. But I also brought you guys a piece when that came out, and I told you, no, I don't think I'm wrong. I don't believe that Paulo Costa is flying to Salt Lake City to take on a Russian kickboxer. I don't believe that. I think getting anybody against Chimaev is a very hard thing to do. The Terminator, Paulo Costa, some people call him the Eraser. I like the Terminator. But Paulo Costa wasn't shy about sharing some of his differences that he was having at the negotiating table. He wasn't shy about it. And he even said, man, I'll do what Francis did. I'll run this damn thing out. However you guys want to play this, I'll play. But I think that it's a relevant factor that he was difficult at that time. Right, wrong, or indifferent, but he was difficult at that time, and he was open about it. Now, there's several guys that are like that, and you see it their way, and you bring them this great new shiny contract. But when you do that, and you present that with them, you also present them with the hardest task that they've ever been asked to do. Is that's the time to get the yes. That's the time to go, I'm going to do this for you, but here's what you're going to do to me. Not 3 fights, not 5 fights, not I'll see you down the road right now, right here, right now, Chimaev. And that's what I believe happened. And that's what I told Ariel had happened. That's what Aaron credited me with. I believe that that's what happened. I don't believe they gave him a great, big, new, shiny, beautiful contract and then said, come to Salt Lake City and take on this Russian kickboxer. And I do not attempt to insult the Russian kickboxer, by the way. Guy's a total stud. Total stud. But I'm not familiar with him, and you guys wouldn't be either. He never fought on pay-per-view before. He never fought on a main card before. I don't call him the Russian kickboxer to be condescending to him. I'm telling you what I know about him. And that would be a very strange guy to match up Paulo Costa with when you just did a beautiful contract and you could get him to agree to anything right now. And that's what you try to get him to agree with? I made you peace back then. I told you I don't think so. Now, I've been a fight fan since I skipped a class with my buddy Jeff Williams my junior year of high school, went down to the video store and rented something called the UFC. Took a VHS, put it in a tape player, and this guy named Hoist Gracie, amongst others, pops up. I don't know of a time ever that the organization has broken up a fight. It doesn't matter if it's a main event, an undercard, somewhere in between. It doesn't matter. I know of fights that get broken up all the time because one of the guys is sick or he's hurt or whatever their excuses are. I don't know of a time that the organization has stepped in and done it. If it's happened, I don't know of it. Could not cite it for you. Never heard of it. But never happened. It stayed very quiet. That's the position that Paulo Costa was in. He was 1 week from boarding an airplane to go out to Salt Lake City when he gets a phone call that says the fight's off and we're going back to you versus Chimaev, which is what the whole world expected anyway. Because yours truly told the biggest media member, Errol Hawani, and it got picked up by Aaron Bronstetter, who works for the biggest network that covers the sport in Canada called TSN. I mean, this is the way that it happened. You would never run that back. And when I tell you never, this is not an exception because this didn't get ran back. Okay, great. So now you've got the fight that everybody thought that you were going to have and the fight that everybody wanted to see. And by the time it goes off, there's going to be a 6-month gap in between. I can't remember the last time that Chimaev got a paycheck. But I know it was a long time ago because I know Nate Diaz was on the card, and I know Nate Diaz has left the organization, signed somewhere else, trained for a sport he'd never done before, done the fight, and is already recovered, and that was a month ago. I mean, not for nothing. Like, this has been a meaningful period of time. That's never happened before. It's never happened, these pieces that I'm presenting for you. And there's no part of this where I'm saying it's not great. It's not successful. It's not wonderful. I'm not. I don't know. It's not happened before. It's an experiment. We're all going through this together, but I would like you to observe it. Because Ian makes a fantastic point. And I have long wondered who's at fault here. I like to know who's at fault here, right? Like, the marketing department of the UFC, which is a machine. I mean, these are the best and brightest people. These are my friends. But if my friends were to talk about me, they would say wonderful things. Chael's a really great guy. And then they'd have to go, well, you know, except for when he used to rob banks and broke the rules of every athletic commission there ever was. Like, they would have to say other things, right? There's always corrective parts that you could put out, even in a wonderful friendship. But I'm just sharing with you what did happen here. And I don't just mean on this fight. I mean on Khamzat Chimaev. There are 3 media darlings in the history of the company. In history, there's 3. Probably in this order. Conor McGregor, Ronda Rousey, Khamzat Chimaev. If you want to argue about the order, go ahead, but it's those 3. There was an attempt to have a 4th named Brock Lesnar, but Brock had to meet him halfway and he didn't do it. I mean, I'm just sharing for you, in the history of the company, there has only been 3 that the media were captivated by. Khamzat Chimaev was such a big deal. There was a headline. Now, make sure you understand. I didn't say an article and I didn't say a story. A headline. It beat everything else out. And it was Michael Bisping telling a story, not that he heard from Chimaev, that he had heard from somebody else that he didn't even know if was true about Chimaev. That's a literal statement. I'm going to say it again. This isn't a riddle. This isn't a riddle. I'm telling you a literal statement. Michael Bisping, headline, telling a story about Chimaev that he got from someone else, and Bisping even said, I don't even know if this is accurate, but this is what I was told. Had to do with Chimaev driving, and he wasn't on the right side of the lane like we do in America. He was on the opposite lane in a rental car. This is 3.5 years ago. I just told you that it was a headline. I told you who said it was Bisping. I've never known who Bisping got it from because he never said. And I told you what it was about, which was Chimaev driving on the opposite side of the road in a rental car while he was in the United States. There is no story from 3.5 years ago that I could tell you about in MMA, and neither could you. You could not produce a story from me that made a headline, tell me the author, and tell me the context. We don't even know if it happened. The point that I'm trying to make is how big Chimaev was. You couldn't go anywhere without hearing about Chimaev. All of a sudden, it's radio silence. And I get that that's not literal. I get that you can find Chimaev stuff. But it's certainly not like it used to be. Whose side is that on? Is Chimaev not returning those phone calls? Did he lose interest? Is that not what he's doing anymore? I don't know about that, man. Pretty damn good at media. I think he enjoys it. Chimaev was one of the best fighters in the world for a long time. He couldn't make any money. He's at a gym. He's out there in Sweden. I mean, not for nothing. He finally got the spotlight. I think he enjoyed it. I think he did everything right. And Chimaev's a lot younger than you might know. Chimaev's like 27 years old. This guy's got a decade left of shelf life. So I want to just take a look at this card. Everything that I just stated for you. Okay, now this is a co-main event. We weren't talking about the main event 6 months ago. We didn't even know it. But we were talking about the co-main event, and everybody was looking forward to it. When there was a breakup and Paulo Costa got put over here, there was such a deflation. There was such a letdown by the audience that the organization went in, pulled the fight, and put it back on. That's a really big deal. 3 days ago, it was announced that Israel Adesanya is not guaranteed a rematch with Sean Strickland. Now, just so you understand what that means I'm preserving the right to announce that Chimaev and Paulo Costa is a #1 contenders match. Whether it ends up being it or not, I'm preserving the right to announce that it is. There's a lot on that. This is a co-main event. This is October 22nd. This is in Fight Island. This is on pay-per-view. Tell me another fight on that card, please. Go ahead. I'll wait. Tell me another fight on the card. Tell me the main event of the card. Some of you smart marks know what it is. But if you are one of the smart marks and you know that it's Oliveira versus Islam, which is a 4-1 spread. It was 3-1 the first time. It's now 4-1. Islam has nothing he can say. There's no need to interview Islam. Hey, Islam, do you think you can beat Charles? Yeah, I've already beat Charles. Okay, do you think you can beat him again? Yeah, and so does everybody else. That's why I'm a 4-1 favorite. But we're all done here. Great. No problem. Let's hear from Charles. If you're going to do a rematch, the guy had to fight for it. He had earned it. He had to want it. Let's hear why. Well, Charles has done 4 pieces of media about this fight. The first was to let you know he wasn't going to do it. The second was to let you know he's going to fight Conor McGregor. The third was to let you know he will fight Islam, but not on that date because he's injured. And the fourth, once it was signed, was to let you know he will not be doing media leading into the fight, that's what he regrets about the first one. Not making this up. The fourth piece of media Charles Oliveira ever did about this fight is to let you know his regret going into the first one is that he talked too much. He said, I'm not going to make that mistake again. I'm not going to do media. Fair enough. You don't need to because we got a killer co-main event. They're not saying anything. Now, that would be very in line with Paulo Costa. I can't put that on him. And I don't know if Chimaev isn't talking about it. I don't know if he respects him. If it's the first guy at 185 pounds in the top 20 that he's ever fought. It's the first guy with takedown defense that he's ever fought. If it's the biggest guy that he's ever fought. Chimaev didn't make weight for his last fight. Paulo Costa has missed weight for the weight class up above. Like, this is a really big guy. This is a really different challenge. Does he respect him? Is there pressure here? Is the media not calling him? I don't have the answers for this, but something doesn't feel right. It hasn't felt right 6 months ago when the fight was made. It didn't feel right when the fight was announced that it wasn't going to happen. It didn't feel right when they broke it up and broke the Russian kickboxer. It doesn't feel right now that it's next month, and I can't find a statement from either one of them. I can find a statement for the main event saying I'm not going to do media for. Okay, for goodness sakes. All right, fair enough. Let's just move to the co-main event because that's the one everybody wants to see. But I can't find it. Are they buckled down in training? People will love to tell you the big braggadocious guy, man, that's the coward. He's got something to cover up. He's trying to talk himself into it. Those people are wrong. It's a little quiet guy that's scared, doesn't want anybody to look. The big loud guy wants people to see because he's got confidence. You've had it wrong. Your teachers and your mother told you wrong. So if I'm at all on the right trail and these two respect each other and they're buried down and they're hunkered down and everything's great, now there's a little bit of pressure. Right, we've seen people miss bigger fights like world title fights because they had a foot. I didn't say the foot was broken. I didn't say it was rolled. I didn't say it was sprained. The foot hurt. We've seen this, and you've eaten it up. You've accepted it. That's okay with you. So if all those pieces are there, and then all of a sudden the lights get brighter and the pressure grows because it gets named a #1 contenders fight, does that make them want to do it more, or does that drive them even further apart? Something about this fight doesn't feel right.